Alright guys, welcome to Formula 1 News. Lewis Hamilton made some fascinating statements after the Montreal Grand Prix, confirming what we theorised to be true. Drama behind the scenes at Ferrari is in full force. The Fred Vasseur rumours continue to emerge, with Hamilton saying that there are serious issues behind the scenes right now that he would talk about if he could. Says there are serious changes needed in the organisation, and there is in some respects chaos behind the scenes that has led to their current predicament as a team. What does this mean for his future, for the future of Fred Vasseur? What exactly is he talking about here that he's revealing publicly and teasing, but can't say anything else about? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. This, of course, is the debut, or whatever they call it, the premiere of the new Formula 1 movie. They're doing a lineup. It's gonna be an event for sure. Whether the film is good or bad, I'm actually kind of optimistic the movie's gonna be pretty good. I think as a movie, it's gonna be good. As an experience for a hardcore Formula 1 fan, I'm less convinced, but we will see, time will tell. George Russell won the Grand Prix this last weekend. He becomes the 4th Grand Prix winner of the season. We have now had 10 rounds. Max has won a fair few, couple actually. Piastri's won a fair few. Lando's won a couple, and, was never in a chance to win this weekend, but of course we know that there was some drama at the end of yesterday's race. Now, the Canadian Grand Prix last year caused lots of drama. If you guys remember in 2024, it was raining a bit, and on the first day, there were lots of fans getting told that practice actually wasn't going to be on and it was been cancelled, and they were getting turned away. Even at the metro station, this news was coming through. This year was a far better experience for, I think, pretty much all involved, and I was amazed, not really amazed, because I thought the crowd would be great, but I was there on Friday, and it was like the grandstands were packed out for practice, FP1, FP2 on Friday, right? Which I thought was mega, to be honest, in the context of, the Grand Prix weekends. Because you go to a lot of Grand Prix, or, you see a lot of Grand Prix in certain countries, and you're looking at the stands in the race, and you're certainly looking at the stands during practice. You're just like, well, do we have to have a Grand Prix here? Can we not do more here? So it looks like Canada, absolutely deserving in my opinion, is going to get the extension. Potentially, we're talking like a decade long. I don't think the Canadian Grand Prix should go anywhere. I think it's a great circuit. Okay, maybe it has its flaws, but I don't think it should be going anywhere. And it'd be nice to see a track that actually deserves a spot on the calendar getting a really long extension. That's my opinion. Antonelli got a podium, his first podium in Formula 1. Becomes the 3rd teenager to ever do it, behind Verstappen and behind, remarkably enough, Lance Stroll. I think there's loads of interesting stats about Antonelli getting this first podium of his Formula 1 career. My favourite one is maybe actually this, which is the fact that Antonelli is the first Italian driver, full stop, to be on the podium since 2009. He was 3 when Jarno Trulli was last on the podium at the Japanese Grand Prix. Last Italian driver until Antonelli's been on the podium yesterday, right? So it could be a big moment for Italian motorsport, although I'm sure that there was some tifosi out there that would like, and maybe it could still happen, Antonelli driving a Ferrari at some point in his Formula 1 career. It may happen, it may not happen. We'll see how his tenure progresses. But there are bigger fish to fry right now at Ferrari that we'll get into in a second. I did want to quickly comment on this, because thanks to Chassising for pointing out to me an interesting quirk, really. We looked earlier today at a number of the penalties that had been given out for causing a collision in recent times, and basically all of them were given penalty points as well, although this isn't always necessarily the precedent if teammates are involved in the situation. Regardless what you think about it, to me a 5-second penalty with no penalty points for causing a collision was very minor, was very lenient, even given the teammate circumstances. And sure, would a 10-second penalty and 2 penalty points on his licence have changed anything anyway? No, still would have been the same outcome, because he was still classified in the Grand Prix. It doesn't carry forward, and it's not like he's on the verge of a race ban, Lando Norris. But still, I thought it was a little bit lenient what happens there. And I think there's also other understandable drama around the fact that there were 7 cars at the end of the Grand Prix that undertook or overtook after the race was over, but the safety car flags were still flying. That is not allowed. Now, it's happened before and it was given a warning, but Yuki Tsunoda, I think, was understandable in his frustration that he passed a limping Piastri under a red flag in, not a dangerous condition. Yes, he broke the rules. What he did, was it dangerous? No, but he broke the rules, and therefore the FIA were very adamant that, look, Yuki, you broke the rules. It is what it is. It's a 10-place penalty. And yeah, they had the precedent from Behrman back in Monaco, so they kind of had to do it. But if I'm Yuki, I am fuming, right? Because you're now looking at the fact that 7 drivers overtook and broke the rules under the safety car after the Grand Prix was over. And again, was what they did dangerous? No. But was it breaking the rules? Yes. And as a result, you can understand the frustration to say, look, why are the FIA enforcing some things over other things? And you could argue, which I think is probably the reality of the situation here, that if Yuki does it, it's one man to punish. When 7 drivers do it, what are you going to do? You're going to punish all of them? Maybe you should, but that's not really how the stewards like to do things. So lots of drama, and for good reason, this weekend. But let's talk about Ferrari, because these were the average sector times of the weekends. And it's pretty clear that we had the 2 Mercedes, we had Verstappen, and we had the 2 McLarens in the mix in all of the sectors. The Ferraris were the next best, effectively, and Hamilton had some pretty sizable damage. They talked about 20 points of downforce. Difficult to say how much lap time it was costing him. The general theory is it was up towards half a second a lap, which, feels probably about right. Certainly in the last sector, he was losing a load of time with the damage. I mean, his right side of his floor was completely ripped off, and it's a number of races now this year where Hamilton has had unfortunate damage that have cost him in these situations. I will say the Ferrari strategy, putting him into traffic, was never really a good idea, and Leclerc's strategy was equally shambolic in my opinion, because there was such an obvious one-stop attempt. It may not have massively improved Leclerc's chances, but it may have given him a go. I mean, Carlos Sainz and Esteban Ocon, they tried the one-stop strat, and it worked, right? Like, they went really long on the hard tyres. They did what Leclerc should have done, and they made progress through the field. Yuki tried it as well, but he was starting much further back, so he gave it a go and he made up some places as well. Leclerc, okay, maybe he finished where he would have done anyway, but it was surely at least worth a try. Right, Ferrari just effectively gave up on being competitive on the day, which confused me somewhat, but they were quite clearly the 4th best car behind Max, of course, and the other contenders for the end of the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, there's lots of optimism around Ferrari in other regards. Robert Kubica, and of course Ferrari had the victory at Le Mans this past weekend, and I think one of the cars has actually now been disqualified, the number 50, but they have still, as it stands, won Le Mans again for the 3rd year in a row, and have been dominating WEC so far this season. Here we go, they've got the 24-hour Le Mans victory flag raised at Maranello, so understandably lots of optimism around that side of things, but on the Formula 1 track, it's looking more like the groundhog that Hamilton hit over the last 24 hours, because Fred Vasseur is finding himself under some understandable, but some serious pressure. Now, Coletta, he's running the show over there at the WEC, but Vasseur's position is very much in the balance, and there has been talk about the fact that, okay, maybe they would simply put Coletta in the Formula 1 project instead. After 10 races, Ferrari are the only top team without a victory this season. Okay, they won the sprint in China, but in a main Grand Prix, that's not what we have seen. Some discussion here that, look, if they do this, if they get rid of Vasseur, which feels, right now, I think it's more likely than not that Vasseur is going to go. Obviously, if that happens and they bring in Coletta, it's a massive challenge. But one of the biggest challenges would be to convince Leclerc and Hamilton that this is actually the right decision, because it feels to them like the Vasseur should stay. That's certainly what they've made clear over the last couple of days. And if Ferrari don't do that, then it raises even more very serious questions. But Vasseur did say after the weekend, upgrades, they're on the way. Upgrades will arrive soon, but I don't think that is the main issue. So, what's Vasseur precisely talking about here? Like, what exactly does he mean? It's not the main issue, right? So, okay, is the car the main issue? Well, the conclusion would be yes. So what's he doing? Blaming the drivers? Is he saying that it's Leclerc's fault? Look, did Leclerc have the best qualifying session? Yes, he blamed Isaac Hadjar. Did Hadjar really do anything wrong? No, it was kind of unfortunate. Should Leclerc have done better in that moment? Probably yes. I think he feels like that himself in hindsight. But, what are you going to do? Blame Leclerc and Hamilton for the team's failings? I don't think that's what Vasseur is doing. So, I can't possibly read it in that way. And it's quite clear that that's not the primary issue. What is the main issue? The pit stop team, they're absolutely killing it. They're the best on the grid right now. They were, again, the fastest pit stop this weekend with Hamilton. Leclerc wasn't far behind either. Blaming operations? I mean, look, maybe operations still aren't great. There are issues there. But it's maybe better than it used to be. The issue is the car, right? Like, at the end of the day, the issue is the development that has led to the car. But of course, the car is the outcome, right? That's the symptom, as it were, of the issues up the chain. So, I don't think Vasseur's talking about the car. I think he's talking about the issues further up the chain, whether that be the engineering team, whether that be management, whether that be the top brass. Like, that's all I can imagine Vasseur's really getting at here, is that structure is somewhat flawed. Because Vasseur says the car, I mean, it's interesting the way that Vasseur talks. I don't really ever know what exactly he's getting at, because he says we're able to do a purple sector 1, which is true. Leclerc did a purple sector 1 on the way to, of course, making a mistake at turn 6-7. It's not that the car is bad or that we need upgrades. I'm sure the other cars are bringing upgrades. Just because we aren't declaring upgrades, doesn't mean we aren't bringing any parts. I think that was the point. They are bringing upgrades. But, I don't know, maybe he is blaming the drivers, because now he says it's not that the car is bad or that we need upgrades. Well, the car is bad compared to where they would like it to be, and they do need upgrades to fix the rear suspension. So I don't really... Okay, great, you got a purple sector 1 in qualifying, and you finished how far off the lead before the safety car, right? So, I want to back Vasseur, I really do. And I want to feel like Ferrari are making a mistake. But then you hear comments like this from Vasseur, and he's saying, oh, well, actually, no, the car's fine. It's like, what are you talking about? In my opinion, I think Vasseur is trying to toe an interesting line where he, says one thing, but maybe his feeling and his discussions behind the scenes are slightly different, because Vasseur's not an idiot, right? Like, he knows what's going on here. He knows what the true problems in this dynamic are. And Hamilton was getting at it as well. So Hamilton was asked the question, where are the upgrades, right? Are they arriving or not? Because we've heard rumours for weeks that upgrades are ready, or at least being prepared. And we did a video a few days ago saying that, well, actually, yeah, and there are upgrades, but they're not bringing them to Canada. And maybe that was wise, because Leclerc crashed, right? And maybe they didn't have enough ready. They've got a new rear suspension on the way as well. That it is true that, McLaren brought a couple of new ideas, Red Bull brought some upgrades, Mercedes this weekend brought back an upgrade and a couple of new parts as well. And that massively helped them, right? Better tyre deg in the heat, and they won the Grand Prix. Maybe it's going to be another false dawn for Mercedes, I wouldn't be surprised. But look, that is a benefit that they've had, but Ferrari have not done anything in quite some time. So Hamilton says, of course I'm asking for the team to bring upgrades. We have seen other people bring upgrades. I don't know why we haven't brought them, which is interesting, right? Because obviously, Hamilton knows more than we do. He hears what's happening. He knows what's in the pipeline. He knows when it's expected. So the comment on, I don't know why we haven't brought them, it's either, well, he does know and he doesn't want to say, which I think is more likely, or he is just straight up criticising the team and saying, well, look, I've been asking for this and they're delaying it for certain reasons. We have one hopefully coming soon. There's talk about Silverstone. They're going to bring that new rear suspension, which they hope is going to change things around. But what about this line? There are a lot of changes to be made in the system. And this, I think is what Vasseur's trying to get at, although he doesn't really often really say it, although he did the other day, and we'll see that quote again in a second. And therefore what Hamilton is saying as well, my goal is to try to positively influence to get change in the organisation and get long-term success. There are lots of changes to be made. So, there's lots to think about here, and I'll just share the full quote. I mean, that was part of it, but this is even more detail from Hamilton. And then we can discuss what he means by this. Of course, I'm asking for these upgrades. The mindset for me is, there are lots of changes that need to be made in the system. I wish I could tell you what is happening. There's a lot going on in the background. Yeah, can't say too much about it. There's so many things I wish I could tell you that would explain the things that have happened this year, the problems that we've had, and what's going on within the organisation. But my goal is to try and positively influence, try and get change, so we can have long-term success. There are lots of changes that we need. For me, it's about that foundation building. We are not fighting for a championship right now. So, I mean, that is quite the statement. And I wonder if Hamilton, after saying this, thinks that maybe he said too much. Maybe he said exactly what he meant to say. I mean, yeah, what a thing to say. There are so many things that I wish I could tell you that would explain what's happened this year, the problems that we've had, and what's going on in the organisation. I think this bit's very telling, right? Because it's not like he's saying, oh, well, we made this decision with the car, we made this decision with the car, and that's affected me more than it has Charlotte, whatever, right? He's talking about deep-rooted organisational problems, maybe even political issues to some degree within the team. And on some level, this is why Hamilton was brought into the team. Because in the same way that Adrian Newey has been brought into Aston Martin as the managing technical partner, and yeah, his job is to design a fast car, but his job is also, from Lawrence Stroll's perspective, to look at the situation and say, okay, this is what I feel like a championship winning team looks like, and this is where you guys are falling short. And, Hamilton did all that at Mercedes as well. When Fred Vasseur brought him in, there was a feeling that Hamilton would come in, look at the team and say, okay, this is where things are good, this is where things are bad, this is where things need change if you guys want to be a championship contender, right? This is the point, in some regards, of having the Schumacher, Jean Todt, Ross Brawn era at Ferrari, the super team, dream team, whatever people refer to it as. there was part of that with Hamilton coming in to at least help Ferrari have a bit of a reset in terms of the way they think about things. And now 10 races into the season, Hamilton's saying, yeah, there's lots of problems that we've had, lots of issues in the organisation that need to be resolved if we're going to try and fight for the championship. And I think that pretty much tells you everything you've got to know. There's a lot going on in the background, he says. The things that have happened this year, I wish I could tell you to explain. So, those are the comments. And it does align with what Fred Vasseur said the other day, right? So when Fred Vasseur, all the rumours were happening on the Thursday that he was going to get sacked, he answered the question in this way: we must ask ourselves the right questions if Ferrari hasn't won for years. We've changed the TP, the drivers, we've changed everything except for one thing. So, in this statement, he's clearly not blaming the drivers. Of course, in the other statement that he made very recently about the fact that, well, the car's actually quick, it's not a bad car, so is the driver's fault that they're not winning the races? He can't believe that. So, he's obviously pointing again at the organisational structure, what's going on there politically, the situation with Elkan and Vigna, whatever. We know kind of how it is at Ferrari, but when Vasseur's position is at risk and he's hinting at it, then he backs down a bit over the next couple of days, and then Hamilton finishes the Grand Prix and says, look, even if he didn't get the groundhog damage, even if he had a good pace at the start of the race, his pace over the first few laps compared to Piastri, the first 10, 13 laps or so before he got the damage, he was right on Piastri's pace. Would he have been able to pass and finish ahead of Piastri? Very unlikely. And that's the point, right? They weren't close. At the end of the day, despite Ferrari having solid pace, and they could have done better with Leclerc's strategy too, they weren't close to the race win, and those issues seemingly lead from a position which is very deep-rooted. And as I said the other day, as disastrous as this season has been in many respects, they were still second in the championship, right? So, with everything considered, and seconds being a million points behind McLaren is not impressive, but it's not an unmitigated disaster if McLaren was simply unbeatable anyway. But now they're back to third, and McLaren, or Mercedes, always seem to be on a good trajectory as well. So, lots of issues at Ferrari. We know about these issues, but now they're starting to come to light. And I think on some level we could have kind of foreseen this, right? That we've got Hamilton 10 races into the season. I think it's his first ever 10 race stint at the start of a season without a podium. I think maybe last year even, or in the most recent Grand Effect era, there was a stint where he had 9 races and then he podiumed the 10th. That's not happened this year. Doesn't really look very likely to change going forwards as well, at least in the near future, because McLaren are executing too consistently, Max is always going to be there, and Mercedes might be back, and Leclerc's very quick as well, and he's scored a couple of impressive podiums in recent times too. So, recapturing the magic of the China Sprint Grand Prix, or whatever you want to call it, the sprint race, is not going to be easy to accomplish. But equally, there are issues from top to bottom in this team that are causing problems, and I think it's about time that Hamilton comes out and speaks his mind. I'd love to see Hamilton say more on this. I'd love to see Hamilton write a book about all this stuff one day, but I'm sure that in due course we'll hear more rumours about what this is, because Hamilton and Leclerc are not happy with the idea of Fred Vasseur getting sacked. And, well, on the way that we're currently going and the way that Hamilton talks about it, that feels like a realistic possibility right now. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.